once you kind of get over the whole idea that like networking is this specific thing and it could be in any form of just meeting people, that's pretty much what's gonna like change your mindset of like how easy this might be, you know,
Yeah.
and how much fun you can have with it. There's actually a thing too where, and don't get me wrong, people think I'm outgoing for some reason. Oh, like I am not an outgoing person. Like it was kind of like a forced thing on me.
So you gotta come out of your shell and go to places. I think that's the biggest thing. That's one of the best pieces of advice anyone has ever told me.
Go outside. And like you can just see their eyes like disappear. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is not the person that was coming here to talk to you.
Don't ever do that.
They're like,
by
how
the
did you
way.
even get invited
Yeah.
to this? Yeah. But like my whole point is you never know who those people become. Welcome back to the Unfold podcast by Tenfold Production. Today we're talking about networking. Networking is the basis of everything filmmaking. Without networking, you don't have a crew, you don't have money, you don't have projects coming in. So we're going to talk about networking, how to do it, what the common ways to approach this, and how to avoid, feeling a little bit weird or awkward around these spaces. Because for a lot of people, networking could be difficult. So let's dive into it.
Yeah.
Juanjo, any questions about networking?
Well, unfortunately, as much as people love to harp about, it's all about the art. I'm a creative. You have to eat. You gotta put money.
Yeah, and know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you gotta come out of your shell and go to places. I think that's the biggest thing. That's one of the best pieces of advice anyone has ever told me.
Go outside.
Like literally, I was like, dude, how do you like know so many people here? How do you like have so many opportunities? How are you like in Paris right now? You're like 19. He's like, you just gotta be outside, bro.
That's a good line. Just gotta be outside.
You just gotta be outside.
Yeah.
But it's so true, because if you are not outside, you're not gonna get the jobs that you want or the
Yeah.
opportunities that you need.
You'll stay inside.
Those stay
Yeah.
inside, yo.
There's actually a thing too where, and don't get me wrong, people think I'm outgoing for some reason. Oh, like I am not an outgoing person. Like it was kind of like a forced thing on me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm like a ambivert. Like I can show up when I need to show up because I need to get paid and I need to make money. I need to show up for the right people.
Yeah.
And then like for the most part, I like to like stay inside and not be talking to people that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, it was actually kind of difficult to go out. I didn't know where to go out to as well. Like I've gone to in the past networking events, legit, where I had to wear a name tag.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, hey, and this was when I was working in retail. And I was like, hey, I'm Jason. It's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work at like a retail store as like a assistant manager. And like you can just see their eyes like disappear. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is not the person that was coming here to talk to you.
Don't ever do that.
They're
by
like,
the
how did you
way.
even get invited
Yeah.
to this? Yeah. But like my whole point is you never know who those people become, you know?
Mhm.
But that's actually not my point there. My point there was like I hate going to networking events like that. And like when we talk about networking as filmmakers, oftentimes people are like, I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
But like how else do you get work? How else do people know who you are? And oftentimes the thing with filmmaking and networking is that your work doesn't really matter that much.
Mhm.
Right? Like your work can be the best thing in the world, but if it doesn't show up in the right places, the right people aren't looking at you, all these little things, then you're not going to get more work anyways, right? You're just kind of like selling to your own circle.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes I find that, from seeing out in the world, if you just know more people, you're going to get more work.
Mhm.
And if you're more willing to actually put yourself out there and showcase who you are and talk about yourself as like a personal, real person, like that's where you actually get the most gains in
Mhm.
this space.
What do you think is the best way to get your first connection? Because I'm sure there's so many people out there who have like picked up the camera and just been like, I'm gonna go shoot something. And maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But that doesn't facilitate any way of like having a important connection or a good connection.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started out, I had zero contacts, no skills, I hadn't shot anything.
Just useless.
Yeah, it's just useless. Like I had nothing. So I was literally just a camera and a gimbal, and I'm like,
A pair of headphones.
what do I do now? Because I can't just keep shooting myself walking down the street. I wasn't doing that anyways, but like,
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to make any of these small reels by myself or whatever. I was like, okay, I need to go shoot something to prove myself that I
Mhm.
can actually do this. And so in the beginning, it was just DMs.
Mm.
And like I think that's where everyone starts. It's knowing how to craft just really good DMs that feel like real people,
Mhm.
especially in this AI generation. It's like I get some emails where like the prompt is still in the email,
Mhm.
and I'm like, how did you leave the prompt in there? Right? Like, it says like, please put this. I'm like, okay, that's automatically gonna throw someone off. So
Mhm.
just knowing how to connect with real people through a text message or a DM is gonna be really important. those still get jobs, those still get real connections, and like they can break ice really easily, especially if you have common things in like commonalities with each other.
Absolutely.
um I find that in the beginning, I was just reaching out to businesses and being like, "Hey, would love to like love what you guys are doing. I'm actually local to where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Would love to just drop by and like chat, see if there's any interest in like working on creating a video together." And again, no skills, no portfolio, I had nothing to prove, but show up for myself, and like, "Oh, you're a normal person. Let's go try something together." You know, as things progress, you can't necessarily do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, DMs are still great to connect with like individuals, businesses and brands. You're not going to reach out to Nike directly and they're going to just like, "Perfect, you're the guy to do shoots," you know? So it is understanding like where just talking to someone gets to. And then from there, like, what do you have to do next? And for me in the beginning, it was, all about Lululemon. I was trying to get into this like running space. So I was like, let me just reach out to them. And then they're like, "Oh, do you have a portfolio?" And I'm like, "I don't." Okay, so now I have to start connecting further than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like now I actually have to go and be in the space to show up properly. So I'm like, if I want to work with Lululemon, I need a portfolio piece that's like somewhat in the running space for it to make sense.
Yeah.
So then I started reaching out to like other people, and then I started getting connected to the run community. And so this is kind of like step one of it all. It's understanding who you are as a person first, right? Like for myself, I was trying to get into the running space. So just show up where the runners are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's half the game, just showing up. And I've asked you this before. Like, what were your couple like big things that you wanted to do? What industries that you wanted to join into?
I think for me, my biggest passions in life are sports, specifically like soccer and basketball, and I would say the other one is music.
Yeah.
I think those two are the biggest things, just in my life, and also things that I want to capture as an artist.
Yeah. So it kind of goes twofold here,
Oh,
pun intended. Who you end up talking to and how you end up talking to them,
uh-huh.
right? Like Mersum is in a band, musician. It's like you obviously connect closer to that person because you have some more commonalities to talk to.
Yeah,
And it doesn't feel like you're selling yourself to them.
yeah,
It's just like, "Oh, I'm showing up because I want to show up and talk to this person and get to know them." And then wherever that kind of blossoms into, like that's just like a natural progression of networking.
mm-hmm.
And like, networking is such a like word that gets used so often, but at the same time, I think it's just like relationships, right?
Yeah,
Like who are you connecting with that really enjoys your presence and wants to work with you, even if they're not in a working capacity. It's like, as long as they know who you are, that's actually the more important thing. Because if you put out a really great impression with someone,
mm-hmm.
then they're just going to tell someone else that's like, maybe someone else is talking to them. It's like, "Oh, we're looking for video." But if that person knows you, then they're obviously going to be, "Oh, actually, no, Juanjo, like he makes videos." That's half of where our work comes from.
Yeah,
Like, like word of mouth, referrals, and stuff like that. Because everything's just a trust basis, right?
mm-hmm.
Even if your work's not good, as long as you know that person,
As long as you know.
you're just the only option sometimes, which
Yeah.
is great. Like I'm not gonna say that's like the best way to do things, but the goal in life as a filmmaker is like you get better, but then your networking also gets stronger as well,
Mm-hmm.
and then it kind of just like matches up, and you get more work that way.
No, that's a good point because I think the beautiful thing about our industry is that no matter what scale you are, everyone needs video. So you might be like overshooting if you're just starting out and you're trying to like hit up those big brands, or even like your local businesses that might be stretching a little bit too far if you don't have a portfolio to show for it. But there's always like someone who's gonna need a video that you can provide. Like
Yeah,
it could even be like your mom's like friend who's like teaching Pilates or something and needs like coverage of that.
100%.
Like even if like the default, if you just have the camera, it's like, well,
Yeah, it's like when you're a photographer and you have a camera, you're automatically a photographer.
exactly.
Like just because you have it and you own it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes the same way with video, which is great. It's like the best trick, especially in the beginning. What I've learned is looking at your immediate circle and kind of like what you're saying, like your mom's friend is kind of exactly who you're going for,
Exactly.
because you've already built the relationship, and like you've crossing all this like awkward borders of like, is this person trustworthy or not? It's like, "Oh, I know this person. It's my friend's kid,"
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so it's like, as long as you have a video camera and you have a passion to actually do something great out of it,
Yeah.
then at least you can hopefully sell something out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like the phase one of the career, right? Like I think anyone that's starting out, you have to realize that you're trying to get good at what you do. Like that's like a standard. But at the same time, it's like how you create that experience with someone, right? That first business owner, that first, your mom's friend or whatever, whoever you're doing this with, that relationship is actually way more important than whatever you make,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the stuff might be okay, but that's okay because they know you're kind of new. But if you just keep that relationship really strong, you never know where that goes. You
Mm-hmm.
never know where that person goes as well.
Exactly.
Like we've had projects where, in the beginning, it was like a really low budget project. We just wanted to do it because we wanted to get in like the good side of, working with these people and like this agency and stuff like that. And it's like, who cares about the budget in the beginning? As long as we were kind of okay financially, we're like, let's just do it because I think there's bigger things out of this connection. And then like that project like triple, quadrupled the next year, and then that person changed careers
Mm-hmm.
into a larger position role, and now that project was like 6 figures, and we're like, oh, this is how that happens.
Yeah.
Like a job that potentially came from nowhere or didn't really mean anything in the beginning because we were
Mm-hmm.
just doing it and like we lost money on that first one. So it's like if I had just been mad and been like, I don't care about this anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or like I don't care about this relationship, and then I just like forgot about it, I would have never gotten like any of the future projects that came through. And so it is a game of like any person you meet, you just show up the right way, you be a good person, you want to be fun to be around, and like also at the same time show that you're professional
Mm-hmm.
because you've been given a position, you've been given an opportunity to actually show up properly, and so you have to show up properly,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just never know where it goes.
Exactly.
Right? There's things you can do to like keep up with the relationship to make sure that like you're still top of mind and whatever, all these things, but at the same time it's like you kind of let things cook a bit.
Mm-hmm. And also, another thing, you never know where, or you never know who that person might know as well. Because I remember it was actually it was on the Sloan job that we were doing. I was taking an Uber from my place to the location, and in the back seat, someone had left their Apple Watch there, and then I was obviously like, I could sell this and make like $100, but I was like, let's be a good person today. I think karma will be nice to me if I do that. So I like looked through and I found the contact, and it was some kid's mom, and I reached out to her, and like she was like, oh, like let me pay you for it, like whatever. I'm like, it's all good.
$100.
Tell your kid to e-transfer me $100 right now. But yeah, I just like gave it back to her and all that. And then she texted me later and she was like, oh, I saw you were a director from your Instagram. I'm like, that's kind of crazy how you found that out. But yeah, that's true. And she's like, oh, my friend or my brother works on like network television. It's like, I should connect you to. And that never materialized. But it just goes to show like
Yeah, it just goes to show.
You never know who
Yeah.
people know, like how deep those connections run.
Yeah. The biggest thing that will surprise you as a filmmaker or anyone in this space is that one day some random person is going to reach out to you and be like, I found your work through whatever. And you have to ask them, like, how did you find me? And it's like, oh, my brother's cousin, whatever. like that's how they find you, right? And it's just like, you were just the first person that connected through there. Like all of our first 3 years was just, who do we know? We did a little spec work, and then we kind of built up a new network there. And it's just like this repeat back and forth. Right. The thing is, like, if you're just not networking in the right places too, it can be really tricky because then you're just not connecting with like the right level of people. And so, there's some people that are not necessarily going to run businesses, or they're not like in the agency or marketing spaces or whatever. And that's okay too. Right. Like a good example is one of our good friends, Quentin.
Yeah.
In the beginning, just an amazing personality. This guy's great. Does a lot of stuff in the community. Yeah, I've never expected to do any projects with him necessarily. He just seemed like someone cool to connect with because he was like really deep into the running community and Lululemon and everything. And then we connected, got to know each other, and then he's just like, "Oh, I actually have this cool project end of year. There's no budget for it, and it's like a big documentary thing, but like if you want to show up." And then just like throughout the year, we just kept staying in touch and like nurturing this relationship and like becoming really good friends. And then we just kept growing. And then he didn't really know how to sell projects back then. But he was just getting projects sent to him because he was like in the space. And they're like, oh, Q, do you know anyone that could do like these types of projects and stuff like that, or storytell or whatever? And then he would just be like, oh, I know Jason actually. And then we did one documentary that escaped to New York one. And then into our second year of working with Q, he learned how to be a little bit more forward when it comes to selling projects and stuff like that. We kind of coached each other. We learned a little bit more about how the industry worked, and then we kind of just jumped off of that. And so ultimately, it led to like a 6-figure campaign, and then it led to multiple other smaller campaigns and projects. And as we continue starting to grow, it just keeps snowballing.
Mm-hmm.
So the bigger picture thing here is that you also never know what a relationship that's not maybe a filmmaking relationship first
Yeah.
kind of evolves to over time.
Good point. And I think the next biggest thing is it's not really something you can like teach somebody, but you just have to like know how to talk and not be a weirdo.
Funny enough, you can learn that stuff. Yeah, I used to be that weirdo. And like I was really awkward in school, didn't really know how to talk to people. All of university, I just sat by myself until I dropped out. And then it just goes to show like, you know, you can kind of like build yourself up to these moments because they matter. But also I think before I didn't really have the confidence in myself to go to these networking meetings and stuff like that. Places like run clubs where I could just talk normally with other people. Using that as a networking cheat kind of helped build some confidence in myself as well. So even going to places like, for example, if you're trying to work with more musicians or soccer players, you'd probably be closer to like the pubs or the pitches where like people are actually playing games and like you actually want to get to know people.
Yeah.
Because maybe you see a player out there that you're like, oh, that's interesting. Or, most likely when you're trying to reach out to people, you're going to reach out to players and stuff like that as well. Right. So it is a lot of like shooting your shot, getting uncomfortable and trying, and then seeing how it works out. Because ultimately, you have to just try and then get better through that process versus just like being in your head the whole time and not even giving yourself a shot.
True. I think another thing is I get like a good piece of advice would just be like be a good person at all times. I think that's pretty easy to follow. I remember it's actually really funny. Out of all his Justin's brothers, and if you don't know, Justin works at Tenfold. Out of all Justin's brothers, I met 2 of them before. One of them was at a rock climbing event, and then another one was at a retail store, or not retail store, or like a different photo studio that I was working at. And I remember specifically when I met JP, I had no idea who he was, but he just came in with like such like a good and positive energy that like I just like reciprocated. I'm usually not that nice to like not that nice to the customers there, but I was just like, yo,
It's
like
a vibe.
yeah, just like welcome, like yo, you ever need anything, like just let me know at any point. If you want like a free like session in like here, like just, like I'll hook you up. And he was like, man, you're so nice, yo. And then a few months later, I met Justin here, and I had no idea what that connection was. But then I like slowly found out. I'm like, oh my god, your brother was JP. And imagine if I had been mean to him, or just like not cool.
Yeah.
And then later, Justin's like, oh, I met this guy. And JP's like, oh, I know this guy.
I hate that guy.
He sucks.
Yeah.
I might not be here today.
Yeah. It's like a very common thing to just like not like just don't be jaded with people. Right? Like even if you don't like them or whatever, it's like the relationship is kind of more important. And this is kind of where this all leads to, right? So the relationship based system as a filmmaker, if you don't know enough people, there's just not as many opportunities for you. Kind of plain and simple, unfortunately. And the better boundaries here is like, because we've set this system up where there's 4 of us in like as the founders for Tenfold, it's like it gave us more opportunities because we all had unique circles that we were in.
Yeah.
Like Zach was kind of in this car space as well as like YouTube space. Adrian was in like this real estate and like he was kind of doing more like corporate work with RBC and stuff like that. And then like I was in more of like a businessy space, so I was looking at more like production companies and other places that we might connect with in the running world. And then Justin was more like storytelling, but he had like a bigger group of like, Justin's just really personable, so his like network of people were really long as well, so he can like go and approach other people. He had a lot of access to other people.
Yeah.
And like all of our early spec work was from that, Justin's connections. And so it's just all to say like all these projects lead back to people, and then like what kind of access you have to those people. In the beginning, when you don't know anyone, you need to start somewhere, right? Everyone knows somebody, and like that's always a great place to start, just to get your foot wet and like into the industry, kind of get some technical skills that you can practice, and then from there you can kind of keep like evolving from there and like finding something that's more unique to yourself.
Yeah. Another thing is, specifically Toronto, at least in my experience, the creative circle within Toronto is very small. Everyone kind of knows each other already, especially within my generation, at least of creatives, like the younger side, um, like through social media, Instagram, all these things. Like we all probably have a mutual, even if I've never met you before. If I
Yeah.
look at your Instagram, I probably know like 30 other people that you know. So it's very easy to make a mark, especially if you like already networked with enough people and you have like that kind of team going on. Like you probably know other people who are like going to parties and stuff like that. And this is like where I found like you can really start to get a lot of like really expand your network quickly in like one night. All you really have to do is like, I hate going to parties. I hate going to like events and stuff like that too. But if there's an opportunity where you know like a lot of people are gonna be there, like just go, just like bring your best face forward and just like talk to everyone and just treat them or like regardless of like what they do, like what they're known for, just like be cool, just chat, and then like always get their Instagram or like whatever contact that they have, like you have to get that and don't be like weird about it.
Yeah.
Don't
Just
be
be
like,
like, hey, can I get your
yeah,
number?
it's like just
Stay
chat,
connected.
like
Yeah.
have like a normal conversation, and then like eventually you'll get to a point where it's like you're cool, and I'm like you're cool.
Yeah.
Let's stay connected.
It's the same thing at every level,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's funny too because you know, in our community we talk to a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
about this specific thing. Like how do you go out there and actually connect with other people? And like for you it's like you get invited to parties,
Mm-hmm.
so there's an access to a party.
Yeah.
For me, I don't get invited to parties,
Oh.
so not a bad thing. It's just like my space doesn't really do that as much.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe there were parties but I just wasn't going to them. And so there's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm probably not going to go to that party.
Mm-hmm.
But just know there's still other ways to connect to people.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, it could be one-on-one coffees, it could be going out there and connecting to people on a run club, or do a hobby, like maybe you play soccer together
Mm-hmm.
or football, something that you actually, I would call it like an unfair advantage, right? It's like, what do you actually enjoy already?
Yeah.
So you're not forcing yourself out there to do something that you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to enjoy that time anyways.
Yeah.
And so for you, it's like going to shows, meeting people behind the scenes. Like, who are these people that you can connect with that actually makes sense for that, and then have that blossom naturally into kind of what you want to do more of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there's a lot of people that start doing work in places that they don't want to be doing work in, and then they just keep digging themselves deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
And then that's like a quick way to burn out, because you're like, I don't really want to do this work anyways. Why am I meeting all these people in this space? And it's just like that, like cognitive dissonance of like, I want to be doing this, but my reality is like all the way here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, if you force me to go to a party, I would probably suck at a party,
Yeah.
right? It's just like I just don't know how to have like really great small talk with people off the rip,
Mm-hmm.
especially in that setting. But you put me into a place where like we meet up for a coffee, or we just chat, like meet naturally somewhere else, then it feels much more like a natural playing ground for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different for everyone based off of like, you know, even where you grew up and all these things. But
Totally.
you know, going back to that whole thing, it's like that version for you also exists in like the industry world. There's like
Mhm.
industry parties, like editorial houses throw parties. Everyone just kind of is just like this constant networking event going on. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm opening this thing. Do you want to come by? And then it's like that connection in the commercial world is the biggest thing. Because if you're friends with the people at the agencies, then they're more likely going to hire you,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're friends with the post houses, then I'm more likely to work with them, or the producers are more likely to choose them. And so it happens at every level. It's just like, it depends on where you're at in your career and who you're surrounding yourself with. And like, there's just a million ways to get into the space.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it all leads to going out there and being able to connect with people in real life as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So yeah, go outside, go to those parties, film festivals, events, screenings, wherever you can. Honestly,
Yeah, what makes sense for
just
you,
pay
right?
for the ticket, bro. Pay for the ticket and get in.
It's most likely going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And especially if you come at it with a good attitude, and like don't like hate doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like try to put some energy into it, because you can go back home and like know that you put out a good effort, and like it's going to pay back in dividends down the line somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think once you kind of get over the whole idea that like networking is this specific thing, and it could be in any form of just meeting people, that's pretty much what's gonna like change your mindset of like how easy this might be, you know,
Yeah.
and how much fun you can have with it.
Mm-hmm. I think another great place to network is also sets, obviously. But there's like a certain etiquette that you should follow.
Yeah, I think yeah, if you're like a PA new on a set, you're not going to be like chatting up the director the whole time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's like rules and things going on. I think there's actually a bigger thing for people that are trying to grow like a video production business, or you're trying to, you know, your director trying to like expand your network, is how important it is to work with other people as a crew, right? Like you're saying on set, but also in the agency world as well as the post world.
Yeah.
Like I think for us, that was kind of the big stepping stone for us, starting to work with new people and like opening up those floodgates. Because once we started working with the colorists, we started getting their network seeing us, and then we started seeing, you know, producers and actual production companies or people starting to follow us because we're now in the circle,
Mm.
right? It's like putting yourself in the right places as well, and that's like a cognitive like choice, right? Like we're very intentional with like who we want to work with, how we want to show up, and all these little things,
Mm.
because that's also a reflection on how we network to the world.
Yeah.
Because if we're starting to work with like Company 3 or like some of the top colorist agencies and stuff like that, or like coloring houses, the whole idea is that people that already love their work and follow them, now we're in their vision and now we're kind of like in that space with them. So that's just like a constant brand thing as well. It's like you're elevating yourself with the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And then just imagine you're just replicating that over and over. Editorial house, right? Post house, VFX, whoever it is. You're just constantly expanding your circle over and over. This is
Mm.
just more digitally, but at the same time, it works both ways, right?
Yeah. I think it is a very big like optics game as this
Yeah.
industry is. You have to show up the right way. Um, Especially like that what you were saying earlier when you went to that party and you were like, I work at this retail store and I'm this guy. Like you should like never undersell yourself, I think. Even if you are just like a videographer, you should refer to yourself as like what you want to be. I did that so much and it got me so far. It's like that fake it till you make it
Yeah.
mentality.
It's like a mixture of two things here. I think there's a level of that, but then sometimes even if you're faking it and you can't back it up, you can also
Absolutely.
trap yourself in a corner there. Like again, nothing wrong with being a videographer. If I
Mhm.
was a videographer back then, I'd be like, I'm happily a videographer,
Mhm.
right? And then like as things expand and like you kind of evolve, then I would switch over to like when I was ready, I was like, oh, I'm a director.
Mhm.
And even then it's like saying it with the confidence, but then, you know, as a filmmaker or a director or whatever it is, you kind of need like to give yourself that real confidence as well doing the work.
Yeah.
And so it's always like a, you know, as much as it is fake it till I make it, I think I followed a lot of that too in the beginning. But then what really gave me that real confidence after that was doing the work. So it didn't feel like I was faking it as much anymore.
Mhm.
So just trying to find that balance of it all.
Totally.
But in the beginning, it is playing that game a bit. Like you do have to be like playing it up like you're bigger than you really are,
Yeah.
because that's part of the game. Like it's not so much that you don't have the skills yet necessarily. Sometimes you just don't have the right opportunities yet,
Mhm.
and like sometimes you just need someone to give you the opportunity to be like so you can show up properly.
Yeah. Just
That-
you have to package yourself the right way.
Yeah,
You know, obviously, like don't lie.
yeah,
Don't say stuff that you can't back up
yeah.
or that are like just not true. But you can't.
You could say you're a director, and if you're just starting to get into that space, that's totally fine because it's like that's who you're trying to be, and like your intentions are correct there.
Mhm.
It's just like if there's nothing backing it up long term, then it, you know, you keep doing that over and over again. You're just gonna be playing this imposter syndrome game forever,
Yeah.
right? And so like when I switched over to like director, finally, it was like, yeah, it was like one job in. I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to just switch over, and like this is who I am now. This is how I want people to even see me, and that's the bigger thing. It's like I already see myself as a director, but now I need the world to see it. Yeah, so it really is just about carving your identity and not so much like needing to fake it. It's
Mm.
like just having the confidence in yourself. Like if I'm trying to be a director long term, cool. I'm gonna say I'm a director now because that's who I am
Mhm.
now and into the future. So yeah, just finding that confidence there.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of goes back to the whole point of, you know, the difference of being confident and weird and whatever it is. Like
Totally.
you can kind of play both games, right? It's like if you're weird and that's who you are, then that's who you are, because you actually don't want to sell something fake that, you know, if you're this person when they met you
Mhm.
and then you show up on set and you're not that same person,
Mhm.
it's like, whoa, where did that disconnect happen?
Yeah.
right? So like if you're already that person, there's nothing wrong with that. Like a lot of people love quirky directors because they have a very specific style and voice, and that's who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's based off of like all the life experiences you've built up,
Yeah.
and that's what makes you unique to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, as much as you want to avoid being weird, it's like if that's kind of who you are, just be you, right?
Yeah. It's not even being about like being quirky doesn't really make you weird. Like it could, like you
Yeah.
have to toe the line, but it's not. That's not necessarily the thing that like makes you weird. I think like a better term than weird is, for me, I felt like I was like weird for a long time, and the way that I was weird, like I was very unapproachable. I would like put up like a wall. I guess I was like trying to be like cool and mysterious or something like that, but it just makes it so people don't want to talk to you, and that's like
Yeah,
the complete opposite of what you want to be doing.
yeah. This is getting deeper than just networking things, but it really
It's
is
true, though.
it is a thing of like, yeah, just being a, quote unquote approachable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say normal because everyone has a different normal,
Mm-hmm.
but for you and for me, it could be look very different as well
Mm-hmm.
of how we approach people and how people approach us. So as much as it is, I think it's just a conversation about being open
Yeah.
and being willing to have conversations with people that maybe you don't know. And like that's a lot of this game, right? As a director, I have a lot of DPs reach out to us
Mm-hmm.
or reach out to me specifically to meet up. As a DP, your whole goal is to meet as many directors as possible, right? And as for directors, it's meeting as many producers as possible.
Yeah.
And there's always like this kind of hierarchy of like, who do I need to meet so we can keep doing more work and do cool things?
Mm-hmm.
And then just not being so transactional about it.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people like, hey, can I go for like a coffee chat with you? And then you go for the coffee chat and they're like selling you something immediately. I'm like, I don't even like you yet. Like
I don't even
we haven't
know you,
we
dog.
haven't like it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then like you don't really know who I am. I can be crazy too. Right? Like I can be weird. Like you don't make these quick assumptions of like who these people are,
Uh-huh.
because the whole point of meeting people and connecting is like getting to know them.
Yeah, suss out the vibe.
Yeah, set the vibe and like understand who they are and like let them know who you are as well, right? It kind of
Mhm.
goes both ways.
Mhm.
But don't jump the gun and then don't assume people are like super excited to meet you. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like it's just an open chat right now, right?
Mhm.
It's like where does this go? Who knows? But if you set too much expectations on the chat right off the rip,
Mm-hmm.
then people are like, ugh, this feels like an agenda, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, they had like notes ready to go. But then I just want to meet and get to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the fifth time we meet. If we're meeting that much, maybe that means we're actually like compatible. Like we actually enjoy each other's company,
Mm-hmm.
and we become friends, and then that leads into something bigger.
Yeah.
But then if it just always feels like, hey, one meeting, I should get one job out of this. That's crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like no one wants that experience either on either ends. What's your best networking story? How did you get here?
Like right now in
Yeah.
this chair. Um I think it's just a case of, actually this is one of the biggest things I've learned on one of the first sets I've ever worked on, actually, because I was working on a set that was just like a group of friends, and being my first set, like I didn't really know a lot of things. I had like some hard skills, but it was just like whatever. But these people were just so inviting and so nice and so open with who they were that it was like less so like work, and it was just kind of like we're all hanging out together. And they taught me the most important lesson is, it doesn't matter how good you are or if you're the best at something. If people don't want to work with you, it's over.
Yeah.
Your career is dead right there. So you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be, especially don't be pretentious on set, but just like show up on set with like a good energy, approachable energy. If there's like downtime, like just go like talk to people and hang out. Creating that good vibe on set, creating that good energy on set is, I think, one of the most important things you can come and bring to a set, which
Yeah.
is one of the things I think you told me was one of the reasons why I'm here today, is that I just brought a good energy. I don't think I'm like the best videographer or with a camera. I barely know how to use the FX38 I was shooting BTS on, but it was just the fact that I'm like,
Yeah,
not
it's
a-
a work ethic thing.
Mhm.
And then you showed up with the right energy. And then you didn't do the wrong things.
True.
That's actually equal amounts of it. It's like a lot of people can do what you were doing, shooting BTS and like, being around. But like, can we spend 12 hours with you?
Yeah.
And then can you show up again and not that complaining is the thing, but like, it's like you're not putting us in a different mood that we need to be. because like it's already a stressful place on set,
Totally.
and it's like you came in with this energy that was like, I'm gonna be behind the scenes when you need me to, but if you need me to be up front and like ask questions, I can also do that part as well.
Mm.
And like I've always said to you, I don't really care about technical skills about anything. It's just like as long as the energy is okay, right? Like that's like you just want to work with good people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing of whether it's on set or offset. You like, who do you surround yourself with? How do you spend your time there? Like who are the 5 people around you that like you're really just spending? I'm spending like 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day with you, and it's like you get to know this person, and if I can't spend that time with you, then I don't really want to be on set with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just such a common thing, right? Like people reach out to us all the time. It's like, hey, we'd love to be on set with you. I can bring a lot. I'm like, okay, but I've gotten the same email from 12 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how can I know that? Like, how can I trust that? Like, is there like a meeting beforehand that we can do? Like, whatever it is. I think there's just like this boundaries and expectations part of, you got vouched in because we knew you through other projects and we kind of pseudo worked with you on another project.
Yeah.
But we had like Anthony vouch for you already, or like whoever it was. I just remember already you were kind of in good standings,
Mm-hmm.
and so it made easier sense. But if you're kind of coming in from like an outside perspective, it'd be difficult to have me bring you in if I didn't exactly know you based off of who you were, your work, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like my point of this is why networking works great as well, because you actually knew someone else and like I knew that person.
Yeah.
So it's not about you anymore. It's about that person in the middle.
Mm-hmm. And it's even that thing where I think this person is Anthony, by the way, Anthony Nuska, photographer, one of my best friends in the industry. But I think one of the reasons why I'm also here is it's hard to get someone to vouch for you like that, because when someone vouches for you, they're putting their reputation on the line just as much as you are. And if you show up and you do a bad job, that's a terrible look on their end. So knowing that, if you have someone who's willing to vouch for you like that, you have to show up on set representing them. So if they paint this picture of you going into it, of you are like this person, you bring this to the table, you have this work ethic, you have to always show up like that. It's that consistency as much as it is about like the optics and the execution. Like if you don't have that, you gotta treat everyone, every set equally, and be the best version of yourself at all times. Being on set is half the networking, because people are already gonna see what your work ethic is, how you work, what your energy is, and just being that great person at all times. That's like the biggest thing that's gonna help you out.
Yeah, the consistency point is super important. I think if you had showed up the second time sloppy,
Mm-hmm.
then we would have just been done there as well.
Yeah.
Right. It was the fact that you kept coming back with like the same energy, kind of like showing up at the right times, making sure that like we were good, not really messing up the sets and stuff like that. Like that was that consistency that we saw, and we're like, okay, there's no problem here, right? Like we can continue working with you, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because there have been times where like your first impressions can be really good of someone, and then the second time we're like, oh, is it because you got comfortable that now you're being a little bit more open to like feeling this out and trying new things or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
There's always still that expectation. Like we show up to set knowing that there's an agency and a client there, and we have to be 100%. And it's just like sometimes the etiquette of the space of like you kind of just need to know when the right time and what the wrong time is to say or do the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like just I don't want to say common sense, but sometimes it is common sense, because they're like, hey, if we're in the middle of a shoot, don't be making a lot of noise. Like we're rolling right now, right? It's like the expectations are pretty high for everyone. I'm sure even backwards too. Like you're coming onto our set knowing we're tenfold from what you knew beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably have some expectation of like how we operate and whatever. And so you're playing up it on your end as well. And then it's like the second time is like, are we consistent? Are we the same people? Are we going to show up? Because like it goes both ways. Do you want to continue working with us?
Totally.
Right. So you pretty much had it on the head there. It's like the vouch is super important. That's how people really get into the good spaces in the filmmaking world,
Mm-hmm.
into the right projects, into the right spaces and crews. And if you can show up correctly, especially on your first times and your first impressions, then that's like the key to success here. And it's just being consistent across the board.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that like wraps it up pretty well. I love talking about these like super niche things about like the little things that make you a better filmmaker.
Yeah.
And honestly, if there's like any other topics that you guys want to hear about, feel free to just leave us a comment, follow us, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.